Would we please stop being patronizing when it comes to the protesters that are at this moment in LA and in New York trying to defend their communities? Because sometimes I get the feeling that people think that the protesters are unaware that this is a trap. No one is unaware that this is a trap. This is something that authoritarian regimes do over and over again to attain and expand their power. We saw this in Germany, we saw this in the Philippines, we saw this in Brazil, we saw this in Chile, and we saw this recently in Egypt. The coterie of people around Donald Trump are not innovative in any shape or form. Not even the places that he's picking are innovative. He picked Los Angeles for a reason, because it's a blue city in one of the richest blue states, and it has a massive immigrant community. He could have gone to Central California or Northern California, Republican strongholds that are agricultural centers and that rely on migrant work. They're not doing it because they want it to hurt. After his tariff disasters, Donald Trump's reputation on the economy is in the doldrums, even with his MAGA crowd. After the big, beautiful bill, the impact of his cuts is going to hit his base, so he needs to give them something to be angry about. And what can make a MAGA Republican angrier than just the concept of California? Not the reality, mind, the concept of California. So he will use this opportunity for three things: distract his audience, hit the Democratic Party where it hurts, and expand his executive power. And this is the flimsy excuse that Donald Trump is taking to try to portray the mostly peaceful protests when it comes to ICE, which is his secret police, to test out his ability to undermine states' rights and to deploy the army against the US citizenry. Like I said before, none of this is original, and the protesters are doing the only thing that they can do, which is to not obey in advance. Because they have been put in an impossible situation in which they have no choice but to resist. And the reason why they're put in this situation, in which they have to be the bulwark of democracy, in which their resistance have to overcome the attempts of Donald Trump, was because of decades of bipartisan policy that gave them no choice, including the actions of all of the Democrats. Because the Democrats find themselves trapped in a cage that they helped build because of their inefficiency when it came to immigration policy. Because you have to ask yourself, why is ICE still so strong? This is the same ICE that during the BLM protests were deployed in Portland and next to the White House in Lafayette Square with horrendous consequences. How, after a full Democratic administration, are they still in a position to do what they're doing at this moment? And the answer is that their funding was expanded. And this is a part of the long-standing tradition of the Democrats speaking with both sides of their mouths when it comes to immigration and immigration policy and enforcement. Because the Democratic Party itself is divided between the people who are pro-immigration, the people who are centrists and who just don't want to appear weak on borders, and the people who are the Democrats in border states, who are as draconian in immigration as Trump is. This is not just about funding, it's not just about the inability to create a framework that puts the people who are at this moment protesting in the streets to save their communities in a safer space. It's about doing active harm. The Democrats did not have to pass the Laken Riley Act, and it only passed because of their votes. Every single civil rights and civil liberties organizations warned that the Laken Riley Act was flawed. In seeking to prevent the tragedy that ended up with the death of Laken herself, it ended up debasing due process for immigrants in a way that it is reflecting itself in the way that ICE is acting at this moment. Because it advocates, amongst other things, for immediate detention of immigrants without paper. Not on conviction, but simply on an arrest or a charge. Way their opportunity to have bond hearings. Now associate that with the democratic support of the militarization of the police. And then you'll get the situation that you have at this moment in Los Angeles, which is a mayor and a governor that have to be against Trump, but on the side of the police. That is systemically racist, misogynistic, homophobic, and so on and so forth. And that crucially undermines the relationship between them and the people who are protesting on the ground, who are doing the only thing that they can to protect their communities. Because the government of California is saying that they're not going to force the police to collaborate with immigration officers doesn't mean that immigration officers are not going to rampage through their neighborhoods. I read articles that spoke of an ease within the National Guard to being deployed at the hands of the president. There are court cases challenging this at this moment. But if the protesters don't do anything and allow immigration officers to go through their neighborhoods, it will be less visible, but it will still confirm Trump's executive power, reinforcing the role of ICE and its impunity. Don't patronize protesters, support them.